Archival, J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson, and Buddy Holly died today with their pilot in the crash of a chartered plane.
Just minutes after takeoff, the rising star Buddy Holly tragically lost his life in a horrifying plane crash due to an overconfident pilot. What makes this story about this promising 22-year-old Buddy Holly even more tragic is that all of it could have been avoided. Let's look at the short life of Buddy Holly and unravel the truth that took the lives of all its passengers, not all of whom were without fault. What would later be uncovered about the crash would shock everyone.
All my life I've been waiting, tonight there'll be no hesitating, no boy.
The rise of a rock and roll pioneer. Buddy Holly's early life. Buddy Holly, born Charles Hardin Holly on September 7, 1936, was the youngest of 4 children in his family. His father was Lawrence Odell, L.O. Holly, who lived from 1901 to 1985, and his mother was Ella Pauline Holly, née Drake, who lived from 1902 to 1990. Buddy had 2 older brothers, Lawrence Odell, Larry Holly Jr., and Travis Don Holly, as well as an older sister, Patricia Lou Cater, born in 1929 and who passed away in 2008. Buddy was born in Lubbock, Texas on Labor Day, around 3:30 in the afternoon. His first and middle names, Charles Hardin, were chosen to honor his grandfathers, Charles Wesley Drake and John Hardin Holly. The same year, 1936, saw the Texas Centennial celebrations in Dallas, adding historical significance to Buddy's birthplace. As a child, Buddy showed an early interest in music. At age 11, he began taking piano lessons, but was more drawn to the guitar. His parents bought him a steel guitar, but Buddy really wanted an acoustic one like those his older brothers Larry and Travis had. When Larry came home from the service, he brought a guitar for Buddy, but it was Travis who taught him how to play it. When Buddy later chose his electric guitar, he opted for a Fender over the more popular Gibson. He was attracted to the Fender's loud, distinctive sound and was one of the few artists at the time to play this futuristic-looking instrument. Buddy attended Roscoe Wilson Elementary and J.T. Hutchinson Junior High before graduating from the historic Lubbock High School in 1955. However, the most important part of his high school years was the friendships he formed. He met fellow musicians Jerry Allison, Sonny Curtis, and Bobby Montgomery at Lubbock High, and these connections eventually led to them becoming close friends and bandmates. During high school, Buddy also experienced his first love with Echo McGuire. They dated throughout their school years, but Echo eventually left him for another student. Musical breakthrough. After graduating in 1955, Buddy Holly decided to chase his dream of a professional music career. He and his band played at numerous clubs and venues, taking any opportunity they could find. On Sundays, Buddy performed live on the local Lubbock radio station KDAV on a show called The Sunday Show, hosted by DJ Larry Byers. At that time, his band was known as the Buddy and Bob Band. In October 1955, Buddy Holly, along with Bob Montgomery and Larry Wellborn, had the chance to open for Elvis Presley. It was during this performance that Buddy was discovered by talent agent Eddie Crandall. Crandall was impressed by Buddy's demo tape, and by February 1956, Decca Records signed him. However, there was a mix-up with his last name on the contract, missing the E in Holly, which resulted in him being known as Buddy Holly. Buddy recorded his first version of That'll Be the Day in Nashville. The inspiration for the song came from the film The Searchers, where John Wayne famously says, "That'll be the day."
I hope you die. That'll be the day.
Buddy took this phrase and turned it into a song.
You know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die.
Despite his excitement, Buddy faced some challenges. The Nashville producers weren't thrilled with the song, preferring a more traditional country sound. After struggling to meet Decca's expectations and facing disappointment, Buddy returned to Lubbock. In the fall of 1956, Decca dropped him from their roster. Not long after, Buddy met Norman Petty, a recording engineer with a reputation for genius. It was at Petty Studios in Clovis, New Mexico, where the Crickets were formed. They re-recorded That'll Be the Day with Buddy as the lead singer. And the recording session, which started at 2 o'clock in the morning, gave the song a fresh, new sound. When the demo was sent out, Buddy and Norman Petty thought they might have to re-record it. But to their surprise, the song was accepted exactly as it was, just as it had been recorded in Clovis. Buddy Holly's music was distributed under two major labels, both part of Decca, Brunswick for the Crickets and Coral for Buddy Holly. This clever strategy was designed to increase exposure. By splitting the releases between two labels, Buddy's songs could get more airtime, since DJs typically wouldn't play more than one song by an artist or group per show. Initially, the Crickets consisted of 4 members: Buddy Holly on lead guitar, Nicky Sullivan on rhythm guitar, Jerry Allison on drums, and Joe B. Malden on bass. In 1957, That'll Be the Day was released on Brunswick and became the Crickets' first big hit. It was paired with I'm Looking for Someone to Love on the B-side, a song also written by Buddy. Later that year, Peggy Sue was released with Every Day on the B-side, followed by Oh Boy in November, which had Not Fade Away on the B-side. By the end of 1957, Buddy Holly and the Crickets had achieved international fame. They appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, performing That'll Be the Day and Peggy Sue.
And now, Oh Boy with Buddy Holly and his Crickets.
My Lord, all of my kisses, you don't know what you've been missing, no boy.
This appearance marked the first time Buddy's iconic Fender Stratocaster guitar was seen on television. As Buddy's fame grew, his image evolved from a local Texan to a world superstar. His original glasses were replaced with his now famous black horn-rimmed frames, and he had porcelain veneers fitted to his teeth. Iconic status. Despite his rebellious rock and roll music, Buddy Holly maintained a conservative look typical of the 1950s. He often wore a suit and tie or occasionally an Ivy League-style sweater. With his glasses and suits, he sometimes resembled more of a CPA than a rock and roll rebel. Unlike his contemporaries such as Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Eddie Cochran, Buddy was rarely seen in denim and leather. Yet Buddy's classic 50s style was widely embraced. Dressed in his suit and tie and armed with his Fender Stratocaster, he perfectly blended a dapper, refined look with the rebellious edge of rock and roll. His tall, lanky frame and iconic black horn-rimmed glasses made him instantly recognizable. Fans and aspiring musicians alike admired his distinctive style. Despite his short career, Buddy Holly's impact on music was profound. His style, marked by his signature glasses and clean-cut image, stood in sharp contrast to the rebellious personas of other rock stars of the time. Holly's talent for blending country, rhythm and blues, and rock and roll established him as a true pioneer of the genre. His innovative approach and distinctive style left a lasting legacy, influencing countless artists and shaping the future of rock music. But soon things would start taking a drastic turn. The Winter Dance Party Tour, a tragic decision. On January 25, 1958, Buddy Holly and the Crickets recorded the classic hit, Rave On. The very next day, with Nicky Sullivan having left the group, the Crickets, now a trio, made another appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. This time they performed Oh Boy, a song that was considered too suggestive for the show's standards. While Ed Sullivan himself wasn't pleased with the performance, it created a sensation across America. Later that week, Buddy Holly and the Crickets set off on a long tour overseas, starting with the UK. This tour was a significant moment for future rock legends like John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Eric Clapton, and Elton John, who all had the chance to see Buddy Holly perform live. After their time in the UK, the Crickets continued their tour in Australia. This tour featured early rock and roll superstars like Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, and Buddy's good friends, the Everly Brothers. When the Crickets returned to the United States, they kept up their busy touring schedule. However, in early May of 1958, a riot broke out at a Chuck Berry performance organized by Alan Freed. As a result of the chaos, rock and roll was banned in Boston, and the Crickets' remaining tour dates were canceled. With some unexpected time off, Buddy, Jerry Allison, and Joe B. Malden decided to buy motorcycles and ride them all the way back home to Lubbock, Texas. Back in New York in the summer of 1958, Buddy met the stunning Maria Elena Santiago. It was love at first sight for both of them. On their very first date, Buddy was so smitten that he bought Maria Elena a rose and proposed to her. She joyfully accepted, and the couple, excited to start their life together, married in Lubbock on August 15, 1958, with Maria Elena's aunt's blessing. Buddy Holly settled into life in Greenwich Village, New York, with his new wife, Maria Elena. They were inseparable, traveling together from one tour date to the next in Buddy's Cadillac. Their love was so strong that they spent every day side by side. In September 1958, Buddy produced a couple of songs, Joel Blonde and When Sin Stops, Love Begins, with a young Waylon Jennings on lead vocals. Jennings always credited Buddy as a major influence and friend, often saying that Buddy's upbeat and joyful nature was truly inspiring. Later that fall, Buddy recorded a set of 4 songs with a backing orchestra known as the String Sessions. This was a new venture for Buddy, and his natural talent made the sessions seem effortless. The recordings included the deeply romantic True Love Ways, written for Maria Elena, Raining in My Heart, by Felice and Boudleaux Bryant, famous for their work with the Everly Brothers, Norman Petty's Moonbeams, and It Doesn't Matter Anymore by a teenage Paul Anka. In their Greenwich Village apartment, Buddy also recorded songs like Listen to Me and Words of Love. He achieved the harmony by recording the vocals on separate tracks and then editing them together. The classic Crying, Waiting, Hoping and Peggy Sue Got Married, the follow-up to his hit, were also recorded in the Holly apartment in December 1958. These songs, along with the backup vocals, were not released until after Buddy's death in 1959. By December 1958, Buddy had ended his work with manager Norman Petty. There were rumors of financial disagreements and tension over Petty's attempts to control Buddy's image. Petty wanted Buddy to present Maria Elena as just a secretary to avoid disappointing fans who might not be happy to learn their idol was married. After spending the holiday season in Lubbock with his wife, Buddy and Maria Elena returned to their New York apartment. Waylon Jennings, Tommy Alsop, and a young drummer named Carl Bunch stayed with the couple before the fateful Winter Dance Party tour of 1959. This band, which included Jennings and Alsop, would be the one Buddy performed with for the last time. Maria Elena was supposed to join Buddy on the tour, but she was newly pregnant and not feeling well, so she stayed behind. She said goodbye to Buddy, expecting him to return in just 3 weeks. Tragically, she would never see him again. Decision to charter a flight. Traveling around Winter Dance Party tour was not the most ideal for the band. The tour was grueling. The bus was freezing cold, and one of the band members ended up with frostbitten toes. The harsh conditions and unreliable transportation were taking a toll on everyone. Frustrated by the unheated tour bus and the extreme cold, Buddy Holly decided to charter a small plane to make things easier. After their performance in Clear Lake, Iowa, on the night of February 2, 1959, Holly hoped the plane would get them to their next tour stop in Moorhead, Minnesota, more comfortably and on time. The flight was arranged to help them avoid the harsh winter conditions and get some much-needed rest before the next show. But little did they know what would happen next would be known as the day that music died. The fatal flight, a moment that shook the world. After their performance at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and J.P.'s The Big Bopper, Richardson decided to charter a small plane from Dwyer Flying Service. Their goal was to fly to Fargo, North Dakota, for the next night's event. Following the show, the 3 musicians were driven to the nearby Mason City Municipal Airport, arriving at 12:40 a.m. Central Standard Time, CST. They were greeted by their pilot, Roger Peterson, and boarded the chartered airplane. The plane took off at 12:55 a.m. CST. Earlier that day, Roger Peterson had called the Air Traffic Communications Service 3 times to check the weather along his route. He was told that conditions were good for flying, with a ceiling of 4,200 feet and visibility of 10 miles or more. However, ATCS did not inform Peterson about a crucial flash advisory warning of a large band of snow moving into the area at a speed of 25 knots, about 28 miles per hour. The advisory also mentioned moderate to heavy icing conditions and winds ranging from 30 to 50 knots, 34 to 58 miles per hour. As the plane was taxiing to the runway, Peterson radioed ATCS again for an updated weather report. This time, the conditions had worsened. The ceiling was now 3,000 feet. The sky was obscured. Visibility was 6 miles in light snow, and the wind was gusting between 20 and 30 knots, 23 to 34 miles per hour. Despite the worsening weather, the plane took off normally and climbed to about 800 feet. It then made a left turn and headed northwest, away from the airport. Hubert Dwyer, the owner of the charter service, watched the plane's departure from the airport's control tower. He saw the airplane's navigation lights until it was about 5 miles away, at which point it slowly descended out of sight. After taking off, Roger Peterson activated his flight plan by radio as expected. However, when Hubert Dwyer, the charter service owner, tried to reach Peterson through Air Traffic Communications Service, ATCS, there was no response. The airplane and its passengers never made it to their destination. When dawn broke, Dwyer began a search for the missing aircraft. At 9:35 a.m., he found the wreckage in a farm field about 5 miles northwest of the airport. The plane was completely destroyed, and all 4 people on board were dead. There was about 4 inches of snow on the ground where the crash occurred. But what caused this horrible crash? Roger Peterson, the pilot, was 21 years old and had recently earned his commercial pilot's license in April 1958. He was also a certified flight instructor with 711 flight hours over nearly 5 years. Although he had some experience, Peterson had only 128 hours in the type of aircraft he was flying that night, and none of his instrument training had been with this specific plane. The airplane was well equipped for instrument flight. However, the attitude indicator in this plane was different from those Peterson had trained with, which might have added to his confusion. The Civil Aeronautics Board, the predecessor to the Federal Aviation Administration, investigated the crash. They found no evidence of engine failure or structural issues with the aircraft. Investigators concluded that Peterson flew into total darkness and lost visual cues for controlling the plane. The unfamiliar attitude indicator likely contributed to his disorientation. Unable to regain control, the plane crashed in a 90-degree right bank with a nose-down angle. The impact scattered parts of the plane over a distance of 540 feet. The 3 passengers were thrown from the wreckage. The airspeed indicator was found stuck between 165 and 170 knots, and the rate of climb indicator showed a rapid descent. The tachometer was stuck at 2,200 revolutions per minute, meaning the plane was going very fast before it stopped. The rapid descent shown on the rate of climb indicator means the plane was dropping quickly, and the tachometer being stuck at 2,200 revolutions per minute tells us the engine was working hard right before everything stopped. This suggests that something happened very quickly, leading to the plane crashing. The airplane involved in the crash was a 1947 Beechcraft 35 Bonanza, registered as N3794N. This was a small single-engine plane that could seat 4 people. It was made entirely of metal and had retractable landing gear, making it a pretty advanced aircraft for its time. One of the most distinctive features of this plane was its V-tail design, which combined the functions of the vertical tail fin and rudder with the horizontal stabilizers, giving it a unique appearance. This particular Bonanza was completed in Wichita, Kansas on October 17, 1947. Over the next 12 years, it clocked 2,154 flight hours. Just 40 hours before the crash, its engine had been overhauled, meaning it had been inspected and refurbished to ensure it was in good working order. The plane was powered by a Continental E 185-8 engine, a 6-cylinder engine with a displacement of 471 cubic inches. The engine drove a 2-bladed variable pitch propeller made of laminated birchwood, which was controlled electrically. With a full tank of fuel holding 40 gallons, the plane had a range of 750 miles, allowing it to cover significant distances without needing to refuel. There were many rumors after the crash, which is expected after such a thing occurs and a celebrity dies. Despite his geeky appearance, Buddy Holly was actually a solid 6 feet tall, a no-nonsense Texan who wasn't afraid to take care of himself. He often carried a gun, mainly for protection against robbery, but sometimes he would use it to make sure reluctant promoters paid him what he was owed. Holly had his gun with him on the ill-fated flight, and it was eventually found a couple of months after the crash, lying in the same field where the plane had gone down. What made things even more intriguing was that the gun had been fired. That single shot fired from the gun became the spark for a wave of conspiracy theories. Some people speculated that there had been a struggle on the plane, ending with the gun being fired. Others suggested that Buddy might have panicked because of the bad weather and demanded that the pilot land immediately, possibly firing the gun out of desperation. Some of the wilder rumors claimed there was a bullet hole found in the back of the pilot's seat, or even 3 bullet holes in the plane's fuselage. These stories fueled the idea that something more sinister had happened in the air that night. In reality, the gun had been fired once, but not in the way the rumors suggested. The farmer who discovered the gun had fired it himself, just to see if it still worked. When investigators looked into the crash, they found no evidence of any gunplay. There were no bullet holes in the plane, no gunshot wounds on the bodies, and certainly no dead monkey, as some rumors bizarrely claimed. However, the rumor that something more had happened was so strong that it led the Big Bopper's son to exhume his father's body in 2007. He had it examined by a forensic anthropologist to see if there was any truth to the idea of an aerial shootout, especially since the Big Bopper's body was found some distance from the crash site. The examination revealed that the Big Bopper had been thrown from the plane and died on impact. Almost every bone in his body was broken, and the examiner confirmed that there was no foul play involved. The rumors were just that, rumors. The aftermath.
Historian from Clear Lake, Iowa, 3 of the nation's top rock and roll singing stars, Ritchie Valens, J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson, and Buddy Holly died today with their pilot in the crash of a chartered plane.
Maria Elena Holly, Buddy Holly's wife, found out about her husband's death in the most heartbreaking way, through a television news report. They had only been married for 6 months when she suddenly became a pregnant widow. The shock and grief were too much for her, and shortly after hearing the news, she suffered a miscarriage. People close to her said it was due to the overwhelming psychological trauma. Buddy Holly's mother, back home in Lubbock, Texas, heard the tragic news on the radio. The moment it sank in, she screamed and collapsed, unable to bear the loss of her son. Even with the tragedy, the Winter Dance Party tour didn't stop. The show had to go on, and 15-year-old Bobby V was brought in to fill Buddy's place at the next scheduled performance in Moorhead. He got the job partly because he knew all the lyrics to Buddy's songs. Waylon Jennings and Tommy Alsop, who were part of Buddy's band, continued the tour for 2 more weeks, with Jennings stepping up as the lead singer. While the tour carried on, the funerals for the crash victims took place separately. Buddy Holly and J.P. Richardson, known as the Big Bopper, were buried in Texas, Ritchie Valens in California, and the pilot Roger Peterson in Iowa. Maria Elena, still deep in grief and feeling immense guilt, did not attend Buddy's funeral. In an interview later on, she said,
"Up to this day, I kind of blame myself that I should have gone, insist on going. I didn't go on this tour because I was pregnant."
A lasting influence. After Maria Elena Holly experienced the devastating news of her husband Buddy Holly's death on television, authorities realized the need for change. The trauma she endured, which led to a miscarriage, prompted them to implement a new policy. From then on, No one's death would be reported to the public until their family had been notified. A memorial service for the pilot, Roger Peterson, took place on February 5th at Redeemer Lutheran Church in Ventura, Iowa. The next day, he was laid to rest after a funeral at St. Paul Lutheran Church in his hometown of Alta. Since 1979, fans of Holly, Valens, and Richardson have gathered annually for memorial concerts at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake. In June 1988, a 4-foot-tall granite memorial was dedicated outside the Surf Ballroom in honor of Peterson and the 3 musicians. The event marked the first time their families gathered together. In 1989, Ken Paquette, a fan of the 1950s era, created a stainless steel monument featuring a guitar and 3 records with the names of the musicians. This monument stands on private farmland near the crash site, marked by a large pair of Wayfarer-style glasses like the ones Buddy Holly famously wore. A road near the Surf Ballroom, extending north and passing the crash site, has been named Buddy Holly Place in his honor. The tragic crash that claimed the lives of these musicians has inspired several songs. Tommy D recorded 3 Stars in 1959 to honor them. In 1961, Mike Berry released Tribute to Buddy Holly, which described the night of the crash. The BBC controversially banned the song for being too morbid, though it reached number 24 on the UK singles chart. Don McLean famously referred to the accident as "the day the music died" in his 1971 hit American Pie, symbolizing the loss of innocence in the early rock and roll era. Waylon Jennings, who narrowly avoided the crash, referenced it in his 1978 song A Long Time Ago, singing about the seat he gave up on the plane. The tragic plane crash that claimed the lives of Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper is depicted in the closing scenes of The Buddy Holly Story, 1978. The film ends as the concert in Clear Lake concludes, and the screen freezes with a caption explaining their deaths later that night, stating, "And the rest is rock and roll." Similarly, La Bamba, 1987, portrays the lead-up to the accident and its impact, especially focusing on the emotional reactions of Richie Valens' family. Buddy Holly's story is a poignant reminder of the fleeting nature of life and the enduring power of music. His legacy lives on through the timeless songs he left behind, ensuring that his influence on rock and roll will never be forgotten. As we reflect on his incredible contributions, it's clear that Holly's music continues to inspire generations. If you found this journey through Buddy Holly's life and legacy compelling, don't forget to share this video with fellow music lovers and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories of iconic artists. Your support helps keep the spirit of legends like Buddy Holly alive. Which of Buddy Holly's songs do you love the most?